expand upon. So the first being, for I think you mentioned earlier in the discussion, and thank you for that, Armand. Perfect. You mentioned earlier in the discussion with first-time home buyers who might not have the down payment to be able to get into the market. What are your thoughts and suggestions for people who are wanting to get in, but they don't necessarily have the down payment? How can they do that? And then the other question I have, which builds on a question that was in the chat, is in relation to what's being termed as being an exodus from Toronto. Well, when we think about just the context of COVID and the fact that people are now able to work remotely from home, and perhaps you're now thinking about moving outside of the city, what has been your thoughts and just your insights around that? And then the third question in relation to, is it a buyer's or seller's market right now? So I'm going to put that
that's an easy one. The last one's an easy one. It's a hardcore seller's market right now, and I was having trouble remembering all the questions, so I just want to knock that one
out. Okay. Being able to get into the market as a first-time home buyer.
Yes. So, what I would say is, I mean, as we see prices continuously are rising and increasing, so the sooner you can get in, the better. If you are currently living at home, take advantage. Do not rush to leave the nest just yet. I tend to tell clients that are struggling to get that down payment, if you are still working at home, do what's called a phantom mortgage. So you're staying at home, you are going to have a little bit extra to put aside. We can calculate what your mortgage cost will be when you get into the market, and I want you to start putting that aside. Getting used to not having that, right? Getting that in your savings that will then, after a year or two, become your down payment. So that's one strategy. So you actually get to feel what your lifestyle will be like missing that money.
If they're living at home, should they not try to ask their parents for the equity?
Oh, for sure. If that's an option. Yeah. No. That's great. And that actually leads me to my number two, which is joint ventures. And when I say joint ventures, you can start off with family, right? If you are able to get someone who can co-sign, if your parents have property and there's some trapped equity there, we can always refinance if they're willing to change their mortgage around, get you some equity that you can then use for your purchase. But who are you looking at? Someone over there? That's hilarious. But also joint ventures, meaning if you have someone else that's a like-minded individual that wants to get into the market, maybe even if you guys don't want to live there yet, but you both say, hey, I have so much saved, I want to get in now, I see things are going up. You guys can join together, put your down payments together, put your incomes together, and now buy yourself an investment property that again, like Kenneth said, could be worth $250,000 more in a couple of years, that maybe you then flip and then go off on your own, right? So it's really about being creative and finding that solution.
Kenneth, what are your thoughts?
I always have my bold statement. Yeah, so I think to start off with the down payment, guys, the reality is that the average income in Canada is like $40,000 a year, and when you look at most of the stats, a lot of families, they put out a survey that says, like, if they did not get paid the next paycheck, they'd be in trouble, right? So with that said, with the high majority of people that can only pretty much save a couple $100 a month on the average, to ask them to save $100,000, work on a financial plan, it's like, you got to be extremely realistic, right? So the answer is a couple of things. Mortgage brokers and real estate agents the reality is, like, everyone knows that in order to save enough, like save 40 grand, you have to have a strategy on how you're going to do that. And that's highly dependent on how much money you're making and how much money you can save, right? That's number one. I would say that a massive lost opportunity is pulling equity. A massive opportunity is, pulling equity from your parents' house. I know not everyone has an actual parent, but for the amount of millennials that have parents who have equity who are not homeowners, it's very, very, very unfortunate. I'm talking about, if you lent your kid $100,000 just a year ago, you would have made your money back already in the last year. You know what I mean? So I think that many people should be looking at their parents, family, relatives to go in as an investment. So that's the down payment stuff. When it comes down to seller's market, of course, the hot seller's market. It comes down to moving out. You know what, guys? A lot of people ask, is it better to buy in Toronto than is it to buy in Durham, right? Well, or on the outskirts. many people on the outskirts are seeing a lot higher growth rates right now than people in Toronto, just because the market is shifting. I would say, guys, there's always ups and downs, to be honest. Realistically, in the next 10 years, you're not really going to care which option you pick, because you're going to be happy either way. I mean, I bought a home 12 years ago for $400,000. It's worth like $1 million today. I couldn't care less if I bought it for $410 or $415 or $420, or I couldn't even care if in Toronto it went up to like $1.1 million. I made $1 million. You know what I mean? So realistically, I think we should focus more on where you're going to be happy, right? Because either way you're going to grow, right? The average growth rate in the suburb for Toronto, you've been averaging at least like 4% growth over the past X amount of years. And if the last 10 years, 15 years continue itself, over the next 10 years, you're going to see another 5% growth. So both are going to be great options, right? So I'd probably say I want you to first focus on where you're going to be happy, because it's not a conversation of, I mean, if we're talking about you buying a home in like North Pole versus the GTA, where the home in the North Pole may be $100,000 today and like $101,000 in 10 years, right? That's a problem, right? But we're really talking about you making, $100,000 versus 120, or 250 versus 200. Really, you're making money either way. So I like to refocus more on just being happy. And to the point that our friend made about being a homeowner, if you need a realtor, you can just call me. But realistically, stage homes do sell for more. Statistically, they do. That's why anyone that follows me on social media, you will never see anyone in my home selling that's not fundamentally staged. I do know that buyers do pay more for a staged home, just in general. So that's number one. So I'm happy that.
But is that a strategy though? So if you want to be able to get a home, not to say for a deal, but if the fact that like stage homes are going for more, is that actually a really good strategy that Armand is suggesting around not necessarily going to look at a stage home?
Yeah, people buying is an emotional decision, right? It's an emotional thing, because it's your first home, you're excited and you fall in love. So what happens is, like, when you get into these staged homes, just the ambiance of, I just love this and I need this and I want this. And when you have people on bidding war day saying these things, then they just pay more. So when a home is fully renovated, top to bottom, pristine shape, and it's staged, it looks like a dollhouse, like right from HGTV, people statistically will pay more for that home. So a strategy to not go for staged homes, I think it's a strategy, but the same, right? So I understand that. And the goalpost being moved, you're right? All these, you can't win a home. I'm not working with the buyer right now who doesn't go in firm. This finally, you know what I mean?
Is this where we fight?
It's literally that serious, because me and mortgage brokers kick off on this, you know what I mean? And
sorry, did you say that your fiance is a mortgage broker?
Yeah.
So you have a stressful household right now, then, if you're never going to use any condition.
I say this, guys. Telling a person, in my opinion, right? Telling a home buyer in a seller's market to not go in firm, but go and win a house. It's like saying there's $1 million across the street, but there's a blazing fire in front of you. Just walk through it somehow. It's like you're not like, what do you want from me right now? There's like 15 offers per house, and out of the 15 offers, at least 4 of them are buying it clean, no inspection, no financing. So when I do my bidding wars, right, that I have a couple of them a week now. Like I do my bidding wars, I have if there's 10 offers, I have a pile of firm, a pile of not firm. If you are not firm, you are irrelevant to me. You are absolutely irrelevant. So you get to decide, and then you only work with the people who have no inspection and no financing. Because as a seller agent, my job is to protect the best interest of my seller, and that is to make sure their home is sold with the person that is super confident that they have financing. So therefore, when you are a buyer going on and taking